Ruth sat alone in her cabin, the silence heavy around her. The walls, once filled with laughter and dreams of a bright future, now felt cold and empty. Just days prior, she had welcomed the idea of motherhood with open arms. However, her hopes crumbled when she lost her baby at birth. The heartache was unbearable, like a deep, aching void inside her. Every corner of the cabin reminded her of the tiny creature that would never fill it, and the emptiness swallowed her. Outside, the wind howled fiercely, rattling the wooden structure and sending icy tendrils through the cracks. Ruth wrapped her arms tightly around her knees, trying to draw warmth from her own body. But no amount of self-comfort could ease the profound sorrow pressing down on her heart. Each hour felt like an eternity. She wanted to cry but found herself too exhausted to do anything but stare blankly at the flickering candlelight. Her mind wandered to thoughts of her husband. He was once a source of comfort and strength, yet now he felt distant. The pain he too had to bear manifested in anger and bitterness toward Ruth instead of compassion. His reactions only deepened her isolation. When she needed him most, his words cut like shards of glass as he accused her of failing them both. This added a layer of sadness to her grief. Not only did she mourn for her child but for the love they once shared. Ruth could still recall his eyes on that dreadful day, filled with rage and disappointment. It felt as if he had cast her away along with their dreams. The memory lingered like a haunting echo in the stillness of this cabin, where hope had inhabited moments before. As the wind outside intensified, it called to Ruth in a surreal whisper. Perhaps it sensed her despair and wanted to sweep her away into nothingness. But she was stronger than that, or maybe she simply needed to believe she was. With a heavy heart and trembling limbs, Ruth finally pushed herself off the floor. Her determination gave way to movement as she crawled toward the door, uncertain of what lay beyond it. The world outside was bitterly cold, yet it felt like a chance to reclaim whatever shreds of spirit remained within her fractured soul. She took a breath and opened the door, ready to face the storm head-on. As Ruth opened the door, a gust of icy wind swept through the cabin, biting at her skin and stealing her breath. The landscape before her was unforgiving, a stark, white expanse that stretched endlessly. Snow blanketed the ground like a heavy shroud, muffling sounds and creating an eerie stillness in the air. The trees stood bare and skeletal, their branches swaying in protest against the relentless northern winds. It was as if nature mirrored her grief, cold and desolate. Each step was a struggle as she crawled forward into the harsh world outside. The snow crunched beneath her hands and knees, sending chills up her spine as she felt the freezing particles seep through her clothing. Ruth was met with an unyielding chill that seemed to penetrate deep into her bones, much like the emotional frost that had settled over her heart since losing her child. The wind howled around her, a mournful wail that echoed the emptiness she felt inside. She paused for a moment to take in the bleak surroundings. Dark clouds loomed overhead, heavy with impending snowfall, casting shadows over the landscape that felt somehow familiar yet foreign. In this desolation, she felt no warmth or comfort, only the hollow ache of loss that had become her constant companion. Every gust of wind seemed to whisper reminders of what could have been, laughter shared between mother and child or gentle coos echoing against these very walls. Ruth's heart sank deeper as she reflected on how this once vibrant world now felt devoid of color and life. The vibrant sunsets and cheerful birdsong were replaced by an endless winter silence, much like how joy had fled from her life after tragedy struck. She closed her eyes briefly against the sharp sting of the wind, allowing herself to feel every bit of sorrow that enveloped her. Yet even amidst this harsh reality, there was a flicker of determination within Ruth. As she crawled further into the open expanse, she realized that facing this unforgiving landscape might be a way to reclaim herself, to rise from the depths of despair like a flower pushing through winter's grip. With every inch forward, there was a small hope blossoming. Perhaps it would lead to healing after all. Before Ruth ventured outside, she had faced the tumult of emotions within her cabin. Her husband, Jacob, had all but become a stranger since their loss. The once warm and loving man seemed to have been replaced by an angry shadow. His heartache twisted into bitterness, turning against Ruth in a way she could hardly comprehend. One fateful evening, as the wind howled like a banshee outside, tensions erupted in their small home. Ruth could hardly bear the silence that loomed between them, each moment filled with unspoken words and unresolved grief. She glanced at Jacob, hoping for a glimmer of understanding or compassion, but instead saw only fury etched into his features. "Why couldn't you save her?" he shouted, his voice cracking like the ice forming on the windows. The accusation struck Ruth like a physical blow. She didn't have answers. She felt as if her very soul was being torn apart by despair. "What do you want me to say?" Ruth's voice trembled, thick with unshed tears. "I lost her too." Jacob's eyes burned with rage as he stepped closer, his anger boiling over as he pointed toward the door. "Get out! Just get out!" he yelled, his words sharp and cutting like shards of glass. In that moment, it felt as if the world around Ruth crumbled, the weight of everything crashing down around her. Stunned by his betrayal, she stood frozen for just a heartbeat, her mind racing with disbelief and hurt. How could he cast her aside when they were both drowning in sorrow? But Jacob was adamant there was no room for discussion or understanding in his wrath. Without another word from him, Ruth found herself stumbling toward the door, the chill of the approaching storm mirrored in her heart. She could hardly process what was happening as she crossed the threshold. It felt surreal and unreal. The biting cold hit her like a wave as she took timid steps into the frigid snow. "Please don't do this," she pleaded weakly, but those words were swallowed by the harsh winds that seemed to conspire with Jacob's anger. He slammed the door behind her without a second thought. Ruth knelt in the snow, feeling utterly abandoned and exposed to both nature and despair. The betrayal cut deeper than any winter chill. It left an open wound within her spirit that would take time to heal if it ever truly could. In that frozen moment of heartbreak and isolation, she was severed from not just her husband but from everything they had once cherished together. Ruth's hands sank into the snow as she began to crawl away from her cabin, each movement a trial against the biting cold. The air was sharp, like 1,000 needles piercing her skin, and the weight of despair clung to her like a heavy cloak. But still, she pressed on. With every breath, she felt the icy wind fill her lungs, mixed with grief that seemed immeasurable. Yet there was something within her that stirred, a small flicker of resolve urging her to survive. The snow was deep and soft beneath her, offering no support as she crawled slowly across the frozen terrain. Each inch felt monumental, but Ruth refused to surrender to the elements. She blinked away tears that mingled with the frost upon her cheeks, drawing strength from an inner voice that whispered of endurance. As she moved toward what she hoped would be warmer shelter or perhaps some sign of help, the world around her felt vast and empty. The skeletal trees loomed overhead as if they were silent sentinels watching her struggle. The cold worked against her, seeping into her bones and making it difficult to focus on anything beyond the next agonizing inch forward. Yet with every arduous push against the ground, Ruth found purpose shining through the immense darkness that plagued her heart. Doubt crept in like the wind, trying to steal away the warmth of determination she desperately clung to. Would help ever come? Would she find solace again? But in that bleakest moment, remembering her lost child brought both greater weight and deeper motivation. She could almost hear the soft coos that would have filled their cabin, playful sounds that now echoed painfully in her mind. It was this memory that propelled her forward. As Ruth clawed through the snow, she thought about how life within the cabin had once brimmed with promise and joy. The vision fueled a deep-seated fire within her. She would not allow betrayal or harsh realities to obliterate all hope for a future, even if it felt distant right now. With each dragging movement, Ruth found herself immersed in a rhythm of survival against all odds. The world may have discarded her with harsh winters and bitter winds, but within her heart blazed the determination not just to exist but to reclaim life itself, one crawl at a time. Finally, after what felt like hours of fighting against nature itself, Ruth could see what appeared to be a small glimmer of hope ahead, the gentle flickering light from a fire not far off in the distance. With renewed spirit surging within her, she pushed onward into that warm glow. As Ruth crawled through the snow, her spirit wavering yet undeterred, the flickering light she had seen in the distance grew clearer. Each inch forward filled her with a sense of urgency, and she pushed herself harder, desperate for warmth and compassion. The cold air bit at her skin, and the weight of her loss felt heavier with every passing moment. Just when she thought she could go no further, a figure emerged from the shadows. Tahoma, the Navajo healer, appeared as if summoned by her desperate need. He moved fluidly through the snow, his presence calming and reassuring against the harsh backdrop of winter. Dressed in layers of traditional clothing that blended with the earth tones of the landscape, he looked both wise and strong. His eyes held a depth that spoke of experiences far beyond Ruth's understanding, a lifeline amidst her swirling despair. With gentle hands, Tahoma helped Ruth rise from the ground and guided her toward a warm juniper fire he had kindled nearby. The flames danced eagerly, casting a soft glow that seemed to envelop both of them in its embrace. As she settled close to the fire, its warmth seeped into her chilled bones, almost as if it were breathing life back into her weary spirit. "Let the fire heal you," Tahoma said softly, his voice resonating with ancient wisdom. He began to chant the way of blessing, his melodic words weaving through the air like threads of light. The sounds wrapped around Ruth, soothing her fractured heart and silencing the storm of grief that had raged within her since that fateful day. With each note he sang, Ruth felt something shift inside her, layers of anguish peeling away like frozen leaves in springtime. She closed her eyes and imagined each word embracing her sorrow and transforming it into something lighter. The healing energy wrapped around her like a protective blanket, allowing room for hope to take root in the space left by despair. In that moment by the juniper fire, Ruth realized she was not alone. Tahoma's presence was a reminder that kindness existed even in the darkest times. As he continued to chant, Ruth let herself feel the warmth of compassion radiating from him, a strength she hadn't known she needed so desperately. By opening herself up to this moment, she sensed a spark igniting within her soul. Here was an opportunity to begin anew. Even amidst tragedy, life could flourish again. With Tahoma by her side, she started to believe that healing was possible, perhaps not immediately, but it lay on the horizon like the promise of dawn. As Tahoma settled by the juniper fire, he began to weave his spiritual rituals into a delicate tapestry of sound and intention. The flames crackled softly, providing a serene backdrop to the soft, rhythmic chants that flowed from his lips. Each word had been passed down through generations, a sacred language filled with deep meaning, designed to heal both body and spirit. Ruth watched as Tahoma lifted his hands to the sky, the movement fluid and graceful. The way he conducted his rituals with ancient purpose captivated her. He called upon the elements, the earth, the air, the fire, and the water, to form a protective circle around them. With each chant, Ruth felt an energy building in the air, something tangible that reached out and wrapped around her like an embrace. He began with a gentle invocation of the earth, asking for grounding and stability. "Mother Earth, let your strength flow through Ruth," he intoned, allowing his voice to rise and fall like the soothing waves of a quiet river. "Let her feel your support as she walks this difficult path." As he spoke, Ruth envisioned herself sinking into the earth, drawing strength from its core. Next, Tahoma turned to the air. "Grandfather Sky, fill her lungs with breath and wisdom," he continued. His words were like a soft breeze, stirring memories in her heart of laughter and light amidst the shadows of grief. With each breath she took, she felt as if she was inhaling not just air but hope, exchanging despair for clarity. The chant shifted to the fire, where Tahoma called upon its warmth and light to infuse Ruth with courage. "Let the flames cleanse her spirit and burn away her sadness," he urged. The flickering light danced in response to his call, illuminating Ruth's face and casting away lingering shadows of sorrow. Finally, Tahoma spoke of water, symbols of life and renewal. "Flowing waters bring healing," he said softly. "May they wash over her heart and soul." As he finished, Ruth felt tears streaming down her cheeks, not from despair but from a release of burdens long held inside. Each tear felt like a drop of healing rain washing away pain. In those moments by the juniper fire, Tahoma's chants created a safe space where Ruth could confront her grief without fear or shame. His rituals allowed her to acknowledge her loss while also opening a door to renewed hope. It was a powerful reminder that even amidst profound loss, there could be moments of beauty and light waiting to guide her forward. As Tahoma completed his blessings, Ruth felt lighter, as if some of the weight she had carried for so long was lifting. She understood now that healing would be a journey, a winding path bathed in both challenge and grace. With Tahoma's support, she began to believe once more in the power of life beyond pain, a promise waiting on the horizon. As days turned into nights by the juniper fire, Ruth began to undergo a profound transformation. With Tahoma's guidance, she embraced the teachings that were steeped in tradition and wisdom. Each ritual and chant he shared not only connected her to the natural world around her, but also helped her reconnect with herself. The warmth of the fire had not only thawed her frozen limbs, but also ignited a spark deep within her heart. At first, she struggled to let go of the weight of her sorrow. The memories of her lost child swirled around her like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind, sharp and painful. Yet, Tahoma encouraged her to honor those feelings rather than suppress them. "Grief is a journey," he told her one evening as they sat close to the flickering flames. "It is part of your spirit's growth." He taught her that acknowledging her pain was an essential step toward healing. With each passing day, Ruth practiced mindfulness during their rituals. She learned to breathe deeply, inhaling the fresh mountain air and exhaling the remnants of anguish that clung to her like a shadow. In these moments, she began to visualize her grief transforming into something beautiful, a gentle river flowing toward a vast ocean of possibilities. The images filled her with hope, erasing the confines of her earlier despair. One morning, she awoke to find sunlight streaming through the trees, filling their little camp with warmth. It was a simple yet profound reminder that life continued despite her suffering. Inspired by this realization, Ruth ventured out beyond the fire's glow, exploring the world around her with newfound curiosity. She observed how nature flourished even in harsh conditions. Trees standing tall against the wind and flowers pushing through snow-covered ground. This resilience mirrored her own journey, and she felt a sense of kinship with every living thing. As Tahoma continued to share stories from his people, Ruth felt empowered by their teachings about strength and perseverance. She began to understand that her pain did not define her. Instead, it was shaping her into someone stronger, someone who could face the world with courage and purpose. Gradually, Ruth's spirit transformed from one burdened by grief into a soul eager for renewal. She became more attuned to herself and the world, each moment infused with meaning and potential. Tahoma's presence served as both a guide and a reminder that she was not alone on this path. With every ritual completed and every lesson learned, Ruth began to envision a future where she could honor her child's memory while also embracing life again. The journey was far from over, but for the first time since that devastating loss, she felt a sense of clarity and direction. Hope blossomed within her like spring flowers breaking through winter's grasp, promising brighter days ahead. With the first light of dawn breaking over the horizon, Ruth stood at the edge of the forest, her heart racing with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. The journey she had undertaken with Tahoma had filled her with newfound determination, and now she was ready to return to town. The air was crisp, fragrant with the scent of pine and earth, a reminder of the healing she had experienced. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the promise of a fresh start. As she made her way down the path that led to town, each step felt lighter than the burdens she had carried for so long. The memories of her lost child still lingered in her heart, but they no longer weighed her down. Instead, they served as a testament to her resilience, a reminder of the love that would always remain. With every footfall, she felt herself shedding layers of sorrow, trading pain for purpose, grief for strength. Upon reaching the outskirts of town, Ruth paused for a moment to gather her thoughts. She could see familiar buildings rising in the distance, the general store, the church steeple, and even the saloon where her husband often spent his evenings. Each structure held echoes of her past life, moments wrapped in both joy and heartache. But today, she was not the same woman who had left. She was stronger and more resolute. As she entered town, villagers went about their morning routines, unaware of the transformation that had taken place within her. She felt their gazes upon her, some curious, some sympathetic, but none could diminish the light she now carried. Ruth walked with purpose, her head held high. She greeted those she passed with a nod and a small smile, feeling the warmth of connection returning to her life. The streets seemed brighter than before, filled with color and possibility. Ruth's heart swelled as she thought about how she could contribute to this community again. She envisioned helping others who faced their own struggles, offering kindness and understanding as Tahoma had done for her. As she approached the center of town, Ruth caught sight of Jacob standing by the saloon, his expression hardened as he noticed her approach. For a moment, doubt flickered within her. What would he say? But then she remembered Tahoma's words about strength and perseverance. This confrontation was part of her journey too. Ruth squared her shoulders and stepped forward decisively. She was ready to face the past, ready to reclaim her story and carve a new path forward. Whatever may come next, she would stand firm in her resolve. She was no longer defined by loss, she was a survivor ready to embrace life anew. As Ruth approached the saloon where Jacob often spent his time, her heart raced with a mix of emotions. The familiar wooden structure loomed ahead, a symbol of the life they once shared, but now it felt like a battleground where she would confront the source of her pain. She could already see him leaning against the doorframe, his posture casual yet tense, as though he sensed her presence even before she arrived. The tension in the air was palpable. It was as if the very ground beneath her feet vibrated with unresolved conflicts. Ruth's breath came in shallow spurts as she closed the distance between them, each step echoing the determination that had grown within her during her time with Tahoma. She was no longer the woman he had cast aside in anger. She had transformed into a force ready to seek justice for his betrayal. As she stood before him, their eyes locked in a silent standoff. Jacob's expression morphed from surprise to something harder, a mix of defiance and guilt that flickered across his face. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low and defensive, as if he feared the confrontation that was about to unfold. Ruth squared her shoulders, feeling the strength she had nurtured in the days since their last encounter. "I'm here to talk," she replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil churning inside her. "You can't just treat me like I'm nothing. You cast me out when I needed you most." Jacob's brow furrowed, his defensiveness rising. "You don't understand what I've been through," he shot back, but Ruth interrupted, refusing to let him evade responsibility. "I lost our child too," she exclaimed, the pain in her voice cutting through the cold air. Ruth took a deep breath, allowing herself to feel the weight of their shared loss without letting it consume her. "I know more than you realize," she said quietly, "but I refuse to let this define me anymore. I'm not here to argue, I'm here to reclaim my life." In that moment, Ruth felt a surge of empowerment wash over her. This confrontation was not just about seeking justice for herself, but also about standing firm in her truth. She had endured enough suffering and was ready to carve out a future that honored both her loss and her strength. Jacob looked at her, uncertainty creeping into his expression as if he were seeing her for the first time. The silence stretched between them, and Ruth felt a flicker of hope, a small possibility that perhaps understanding could emerge from this moment of confrontation. Whatever may come next, she knew one thing: she would no longer be silenced or diminished by anyone, not even by him. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting a warm glow over the town, the news of Jacob's confrontation with Ruth spread like wildfire among the townspeople. Whispers filled the air as they gathered in groups, exchanging concerned glances and hushed tones about his harsh actions and the unthinkable way he had treated Ruth. This small community, rooted in shared experiences and collective hardship, recognized the significance of what had transpired. Many villagers felt a surge of protectiveness toward Ruth, who had suffered greatly. After witnessing her transformation and newfound strength, they began to see her not just as a victim but as a beacon of resilience. Their hearts swelled with empathy for her suffering, and they felt an undeniable urge to stand in solidarity with her. At the center of town, Mrs. Henderson, a well-respected figure known for her kindness, rallied some of the women to confront Jacob. What he did is unacceptable, she asserted vehemently. We cannot allow him to treat Ruth in such a manner and get away with it. The women nodded in agreement, their expressions resolute, signaling that they were ready to take action. Meanwhile, Jacob found himself cornered at the saloon where he had sought refuge, seeking to numb his own pain in drink, but now feeling the weight of judgment upon him. The barroom had grown quieter as patrons watched him with disdain. He could sense their eyes boring into him, the whispers turning into an accusatory hum. The harsh reality was beginning to set in. His anger had driven Ruth away, but it had also alienated him from those around him. As Ruth made her way through the town, she heard snippets of conversation about his behavior and how it had affected not just her but the fabric of their community as well. Steeling her resolve, she approached Mrs. Henderson and the gathered women with confidence. I am grateful for your support, she said earnestly, but I need to confront Jacob myself. With their encouragement behind her, Ruth entered the saloon once more. The atmosphere shifted dramatically as she stepped inside, all eyes turned toward her, a mix of surprise and admiration evident on their faces. With courage coursing through her veins, Ruth faced Jacob and said not only what he needed to hear but what he perhaps feared most: you will be held accountable for your actions. In that moment, she established not only her own independence but also served as a catalyst for change within the community. The onlookers felt empowered by her strength and began to voice their discontent with Jacob's behavior as well. You cannot cast aside those you love in times of sorrow, one man asserted loudly. Conversations escalated into a discussion about justice, compassion, and community responsibility. This pivotal moment marked a turning point for Ruth and the townsfolk alike. They were united in their understanding that accountability was crucial for healing, not just for Ruth but for everyone affected by Jacob's unthinkable actions. As tensions mounted and support swelled around her, Ruth knew she was no longer alone in her fight for justice. She was now part of a community that believed in standing up for what was right. As the days turned into weeks, Ruth began to find solace in the rhythm of everyday life. The initial tumult of confronting Jacob and the town's response had given her the strength and closure she desperately needed. While lingering memories of her lost child still resided in her heart, they no longer suffocated her spirit. Instead, they became a source of inspiration that fueled her desire to live fully and purposefully. She often returned to the spot near the juniper tree where she had found warmth in Tahoma's fire. The gentle rustle of the leaves and the sweet aroma of blooming flowers reminded her of the healing journey she had undertaken. In those quiet moments, she would close her eyes and feel the sun against her skin, a sign that life continued beyond pain. Ruth emerged as an active member of the community, volunteering at the local school and helping those in need. The compassion she had received during her darkest hours propelled her to support others facing their own adversities. She shared her story with those who would listen, encouraging them not to succumb to sorrow but to transform it into strength. One afternoon, while organizing a gathering in honor of her lost child, Ruth spoke to a group of villagers about grief and resilience. We each carry burdens, she said passionately, but we can choose how to honor our pain. It can either bind us or shape us into who we are meant to be. Her words resonated deeply with those around her, sparking conversations about healing and community support. As she became more involved, Ruth felt a profound sense of connection with her neighbors. No longer did the town feel like a place tied to her past heartaches. It had transformed into a haven where bonds were strengthened through shared experiences. She often enjoyed brunches with Mrs. Henderson and the other women who had rallied around her, forming friendships that brought joy and laughter back into her life. Though there were still difficult days, moments when tears would cascade down her cheeks at unexpected times, she learned to embrace these feelings rather than shy away from them. With every tear shed, she felt a layer of her past release, replaced by newfound strength. In time, Ruth not only healed but thrived, embodying the lessons she had learned from Tahoma, her community, and her own painful experiences. She discovered a deep well of resilience within herself and found peace in knowing that while sorrow could never be erased, it could coexist with hope and love. As spring breathed new life into the land, Ruth felt ready to cherish both the beauty of existence and the memories of what had been taken from her. Her story was one not only of heartbreak but also of rebirth, empowerment, and an unyielding commitment to face whatever lay ahead, embracing each moment as it came and dancing forward into her new life with grace and purpose.